Well, it certainly sounds like some people are ready for a political revolution. Let me thank all of you, not only for being here today, but for the enormously important work you do day after day, understanding that New Hampshire plays a unique role in the political process. You are fighting not only to improve the lives of people in New Hampshire, but people all over this country, and thanks very much for what you do. When I announced my candidacy 4.5 months ago, I think it is fair to say that a lot of people did not take our campaign terribly seriously. That's fair to say. But it is also fair to say that in the last 4.5 months, change has taken place. What looked like a fringe campaign is now seen as a campaign that is standing up for working Americans and is prepared to take on the billionaire class.
Love you, Bernie!
It's not just that all across this country we have drawn some of the largest turnouts in our rallies. It's not just that we have over 400,000 people in this country who have made individual contributions to our campaign. And let me say a word about that. You're looking at a candidate who does not represent the agenda of corporate America, who does not represent the agenda of the billionaire class. And I stand before you today to say loudly and proudly, I don't want their money. I don't want a super PAC. We're going to do it on our own. I understand that when you have a super PAC, you can walk into a room of millionaires and billionaires and come out with a heck of a lot of money. I get it. But we are going to do it a different way. And we're going to raise our funds from working people averaging $31.20 a piece, and I'm proud of that. And let me begin by telling you about an old song, reminding you about an old Union song. Some of you remember it. Which side are you on? Remember that song? Now, you're very lucky because I'm not going to sing that song to you. I can't sing, as some of you may know. But I grew up in a working class home in Brooklyn, New York. We lived in a 3.5, some transplants here, all right? We grew up in a 3.5 room rent controlled apartment. My family never had money. But I knew from a very early age which side I am on. I am a proud progressive. I am proud to stand with the working families of our country, prepared to take on the powerful special interests which wield incredible power over our economy and our political life. That is what I did yesterday. That is what I did 25 years ago. That is what I'll do tomorrow. And that is what I will do if elected President of the United States. And let me also take a moment to tell you something that no other candidate for president will tell you, or perhaps ever has told the American people. It is a simple truth, but not widely reported. And that is, no president, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody else, can bring about the enormous changes we need to rebuild our crumbling middle class, to do all of the things we have to do for the elderly, for the children, the sick, and the poor. We cannot do it. No president can do it alone unless we have a political revolution, unless tens of millions of Americans are prepared to stand up, to get actively involved in the political process and make it very, very clear that this great country and our government belong to all of us and not just a handful of billionaires and campaign contributors. So I am here today not just to ask for your help in winning here in New Hampshire, in winning across the country. If we are going to transform America, we need millions of people to stand together, to take on corporate America, to take on Wall Street, to take on the big money interest. That is what this campaign is about. Let me tell you something else. Some of you may agree with me and some of you may not. But in my view, the Republicans did not win the last midterm elections. We lost those elections. The American people didn't vote for a party that wants to give huge tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires and cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, nutrition, and which does not even recognize the reality of climate change. That is not what the American people voted for. But what happened is we had a voter turnout that was worse than abysmal. Millions of Americans looked out and they said, you know what? Not for me. I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to participate in the political process. We lost that last election because voter turnout was low and because all across this country, people are giving up on American democracy. So let me be very clear. In my view, we will not retain the White House. We will not regain control of the Senate. We will not gain the U.S. House or be successful in dozens of governor's races across America unless we are the party which generates excitement and momentum and enthusiasm and which produces a huge voter turnout. Democrats win when the voter turnout is high. Republicans win when the voter turnout is low. Our job is to make that voter turnout sky high. And how do we do it? How do we generate the excitement on the ground? How do we get those who are disillusioned back into the political process. How do we get young people involved? How do we get working class Republicans to stop voting against their own best interests? And with all due respect, that will not happen with politics as usual. The same old will not likely be successful. The people of our country understand, of course, that we are much better off today than we were when President Bush left office and we were losing 800,000 jobs a month and the world's financial system was on the verge of collapse. Of course, we are much better off today. But they also understand something else, that yes, we're better off than what we were under Bush, but they also understand that for the last 40 years under Democratic and Republican presidents, the great middle class of this country, once the envy of the world, has been disappearing. And all over New Hampshire, all over my state of Vermont, all over America, despite an explosion of technology and worker productivity, you got millions of people working longer hours for lower wages. You have people in my state, in your state, not working one job, working two jobs, working three jobs, just trying to cobble together an income that will sustain their families. And today, we have almost more people living in poverty than at any time in American history. And what the American people understand, and what we cannot run away from, and what we have to have the courage to address, is that while the middle class continues to disappear, and while people work longer hours for low wages, almost all of the new income and wealth that is being generated is going to the top 1%, and that has got to end. Very few people in America, no matter what their political views are, believe that it is morally acceptable or economically sustainable when 1/10 of 1% of the American people have more wealth than the bottom 90%. Very few people think that it is acceptable when you have people all over this country working so hard, long and crazy hours. Parents can't stay home with their kids because they're working so many hours. And yet 58% of all new income generated today is going to the top 1%. That is not the economy we need. We need an economy that works for the working people of this country and not just the billionaire class. We need a political movement which is prepared to stand up to the most powerful people on this country and to create a government. I know this is a radical idea, but imagine having a government in Washington that is not controlled by large campaign donors and corporate America, but which represents all of us. We need a political movement in this country which takes on the economic and political establishment, not one which is part of it. We need a movement which tells corporate America and the wealthiest people in this country that yes, they will start paying their fair share of taxes. That multinational corporations are not going to continue stashing billions of dollars in profits in the Cayman Islands and Bermuda and other tax havens while children in America go hungry. Ain't gonna happen anymore. No, the CEOs of large corporations are not going to continue to receive huge compensation packages and incredible pensions while at the same time they cut the wages and health care and pensions of their workers. Not going to continue to happen. No, we are not going to continue to have disastrous trade policies like NAFTA, CAFTA, or permanent normal trade relations with China, with corporate America shutting down plants in New Hampshire, Vermont, all over this country, moving to low-wage countries, bringing their products back. We need trade policies which create jobs in America, not just in China. And by the way, that means that together we are going to defeat this disastrous Trans-Pacific Partnership. We need a political movement which tells Wall Street that when a bank is too big to fail, it is too big to exist. I understand the power of Wall Street. I really do. I've stood up to them for a very long time. But whether they like it or not, we will reinstate Glass-Steagall. And we will create a financial system whose job it is to make affordable loans to small and medium-sized businesses so we can create jobs in America, not a financial system as currently exists, which is an island unto itself, only concerned about their profits. We are going to break up the major financial institutions on Wall Street. When we talk about the economy, all of you know that throughout this country, there are millions of Americans who are working for wages which are just too damn low. In my view, the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage. We have got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour over the next few years. And I hope that every man in this room will stand with the women and fight for pay equity for women workers. There is no rational economic reason why women are earning 78 cents on the dollar compared to men. And when we have pay equity for women workers, when we raise the minimum wage to a living wage, millions of mothers will then be able to raise their kids with security and dignity, and they deserve that. I know here in New Hampshire, you see a lot of politicians tropping through your state. You're suddenly a very popular destination. And you have heard many Republicans talk about family values. You ever hear that? Oh, they just love families. But you know and I know what they mean by family values. What they mean is that the women of America should not have the right to control their own bodies. I disagree. And what they mean by family values is that our gay brothers and sisters should not have the right to marry. I disagree. I've got 4 kids, 7 beautiful grandchildren, and Jane and I have been married for 27 years. We believe in family values, but our values just a little bit different than Republican family values. We believe that the United States has got to end the international embarrassment of being the only major country on earth, only one, that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. It is not a family value to tell a working class woman who has a baby that she has to be separated from that baby in a week or 2 weeks after birth because she has to run back to a job in order to earn income to sustain that family. That's not a family value. That is the opposite of what a family value is. And that is why I will fight for 12 weeks paid family and medical leave. Brothers and sisters, here's the truth about unemployment. Real unemployment is not 5.1%. That's official unemployment. Counting those people who have given up looking for work and are working part-time, real unemployment is over 10%. And let me tell you something of huge consequence which very few people talk about, and that is the tragedy of youth unemployment. Here are the facts. Real youth unemployment. If you're a white kid, high school graduate, 33%. Hispanic, 36%. African American, 51%. We need a major jobs program to put our people back to work. And the fastest way to do it is to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our rail, our airports, our water systems. And let me tell you something else that I feel passionately about. The United States of America today has more people in jail than any other country on earth. It makes a lot more sense to me for us to be investing in jobs and education for our young people than jails and incarceration. I want us to end this distinction of having more people in jail, and I want to replace it with the distinction of us having the best educated population on earth. And when we talk about politics, let me simply say this, and I think most of you know it, is that today the campaign finance system that we operate under is corrupt, and it is undermining American democracy. Corrupt is the right word. When the Koch brothers alone can spend $900 million on this election cycle, more money than either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, brothers and sisters, we're not talking about democracy. We are talking about oligarchy, and together we are going to overturn Citizens United. You know, I am likely the most progressive member of the United States Senate, and I'm proud of that. And it goes without saying that I have, very large areas of disagreement with my Republican colleagues. That's obvious. But there is one area that goes beyond a disagreement, and it goes to an embarrassment. And some of you may have seen it just the other day, the other evening at the Republican debate. The scientific community is virtually unanimous, no longer a debate. Climate change is real. It is caused by human activity. It is already causing devastating problems in America and around the world. And our Republican colleagues are prepared to reject science. And that is a dangerous situation for the most powerful country on earth. And I will tell you something else. It's not that these guys are dumb. It's that they get their money from the fossil fuel industry. And they are more worried about their campaign donations than their kids and their grandchildren. That is a shame. We must lead the world in transforming our energy system, working with China, Russia, India, and we can do it. We can move to energy efficiency and sustainable energy, and for the sake of our kids, that is exactly what we have to do. And when we talk about American needs, there's something beyond comprehension for me. I don't understand it. I don't understand how in an incredibly competitive global economy, hundreds of thousands of bright, qualified young people are unable to get into college only for one reason, and that is their families lack the money. That is crazy. That is counterproductive to the future of America. And that is why I have introduced legislation and will fight for as president to make every public college and university in this country tuition free. It is not a radical idea. It is common economic sense to say that when young people or people of any age need more education, they should be able to get that education regardless of the income of their family. And that legislation also deals with the travesty that millions of Americans are experiencing today in outrageously high student debt and outrageously high interest rates. Now, to lower interest rates on student debt and to provide free tuition at public colleges and universities, that is, in fact, I admit it, it's an expensive proposition. And I will tell you how we're going to pay for it. We're going to pay for it based on a tax on Wall Street speculation. The middle class of this country bailed out Wall Street. Now it's time for Wall Street to help the middle class of this country. And when we talk about bringing our country together, it's not just the need for major criminal justice reform. I do not want to see kids' lives destroyed because of mandatory minimal sentencing. I think it's time we took a hard look at the so-called war on drugs and the lives that have been lost as a result of that. I think it's high time that we make sure that when a police officer breaks the law like any other public official, that officer will be held accountable. And when we talk about creating the kind of nation we want to become, we cannot forget that there are today 11 million people in this country who are undocumented. In my view, we need comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. You are looking at a senator and a former congressman who did not believe what George W. Bush or Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld were saying about Iraq and who voted against the war in Iraq. I heard the evidence. I heard what they had to say. I didn't believe it. And if you go to YouTube, or go to my website, go somewhere, and read what I said back then, and I'm not happy, doesn't make me happy to say this, but much of what I feared would happen in terms of the destabilization of that region did happen. So what we have got to understand, and I speak to you as the former chairman of the Veterans Committee, someone who has and will continue to make sure that our veterans get the health care and the benefit they need. But also someone who has spoken to hundreds of veterans and learned something about the cost of war, the terrible cost of war. Not just the 6,700 brave men and women who died in Iraq and Afghanistan, not just those many who came home without legs and arms and eyesight, but about the 500,000 men and women who came home with post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury, and the tens of thousands of families that have been disrupted in a way that they may never recover from, and the children who have been hurt, and the divorces, and the suicides. Anybody who does not understand the cost of war should not be in the United States Congress. That is why it astonishes me, and it really hurts, to hear many of my Republican colleagues talk so easily and loosely about getting into another war in Iran. The President and Secretary Kerry have worked long and hard for one simple goal, and that is to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and that is something we must do. But what they have put together is a process and an agreement which allows us to accomplish that goal without going to war. And I hope we all support that. Let me conclude, and I've probably gone on too long, and I'll get yelled at by somebody, but let me conclude by begging you to do one thing, and that is think big, not small. Do not get into the argument of whether we should cut education by 2% or 4%. Do not get into the debate about whether climate change is real or it's not real. What I want you to think about is what we in the wealthiest country in the history of the world can accomplish. Please do not tell me that in the United States of America we cannot join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to all people as a right. Which is why I support a Medicare for all single-payer system. Do not tell me that when we have a massive level of income and wealth inequality, that the United States should continue to have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any other country on earth. Please don't tell me that. Please don't tell me that when mom and dad go to work, that they should not be able to find high quality and affordable child care. And please don't tell me that the United States cannot lead the world in transforming our energy system and combating climate change. We can do that. Brothers and sisters, we can create a nation in which every man, woman, and child, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of the country they came from, regardless of whether they are gay or straight, man or woman, we can create a nation which fulfills the birthright of all Americans, and that is a society of dignity, of security, and ending all forms of discrimination. Thank you all very much.
Just racing. I am so excited to be here, grateful for everything you and this state have meant to me and to my family. I'm honored to have the support of so many proud New Hampshire Democrats and especially your terrific governor, your amazing senator who used to be governor. You know, Maggie and Jeannie are women who know how to solve problems. And they bring common sense and common purpose to everything they do. I also want to thank Congresswoman Annie Custer, all the state senators and representatives, executive counselors, local leaders, grassroots organizers, and especially volunteers who are working their hearts out for this campaign. I think we should just transport all of you everywhere we go around the country together. You know, as much fun as this is, as exciting as the atmosphere in here is, we have work to do as Democrats. I want to be your partner to build our party here in this state and across our nation to keep our progress going. We've come a long way, haven't we, these past 6.5 years? And thanks to the hard work and sacrifice of the American people and to the leadership of the Democratic president in the White House, Barack Obama, we're standing again, but we're not yet running the way America should. Wages still aren't rising for most people. The cost of everything from college to prescription drugs keeps going up. Inequality is still too big a problem. And you know, in America, if you work hard and you do your part, you should be able to get ahead and stay ahead. That is the basic bargain of this country. You know, that's the promise that my grandfather believed in when he went to work every day in the Scranton lace mills. I'm the granddaughter of a factory worker who believed in America and that life could be better for his children, and it was. His 3 sons went to college. My dad, after serving in the Navy in World War II, he started a small business. He saved and he sacrificed because he believed his small business, printing fabric in Chicago, could provide us with a middle-class life. And you know what? It did. And now, within 3 generations, from that factory worker to that small business owner, I'm standing here asking for your support to be president of this great country that we love. And so, that is what we are fighting for as Democrats. We are fighting to make sure that dream, that promise, is just as vital and real tomorrow and the years later as it was for my grandfather and my father. You know, when my husband put people first, in the 1992 campaign, where New Hampshire was so supportive, when he got into the White House, he realized that he had inherited real economic problems from his Republican predecessors. That seems to happen. Have you noticed? You know, I say this without trying to be partisan or personal, but the economy just works better when we have a Democrat in the White House. After 8 years of hard work, a lot of political heavy lifting, the end of Bill's second term, there was a really important set of statistics that represented the progress we made. 23 million new jobs, a balanced budget. But you know what was most important to me? For the first time in decades, everybody benefited, not just those at the top, but people in the middle, people at the bottom. Everybody saw their incomes go up. You know, I went to the Senate. The good people of New York sent me to the Senate in 2001, and I was excited because I thought, look at what we've accomplished. We have turned around the economy. We have taken control over our fiscal future. Just think of what we could have done with that balanced budget and a surplus. We could have made Social Security solvent for as far as the eye could see. We could have invested in education and science and research to make us smarter and stronger and richer. But you know what happened. The Republicans went back to trickle-down economics. One of the worst ideas ever to come out of the 1980s, right along with big hair. They took their eyes off the financial markets, took their eyes off the mortgage markets, and President Obama inherited an even bigger mess. I remember when he called me right after the election, asked me to come see him in Chicago. I didn't know why at the time. Turned out he wanted to ask me to be Secretary of State, but when I got there, what he wanted to talk about was how dangerous the economic situation was. He said it's so much worse than they told us. He was worried about a great depression, not just a great recession. And he had to really work hard. Under his leadership, and thanks to the sacrifice of so many Americans, we pulled back from the brink of depression, saved the auto industry, curbed Wall Street abuses, and provided health care to 16 million people. Now, the only way that the Republicans can win is if they count on collective amnesia from the American people. President Obama deserves a lot more credit than he gets for helping us avoid an economic catastrophe. And I know it's very inconvenient for our Republican friends, but the facts do speak for themselves. Economic growth is stronger under Democratic presidents. Unemployment is lower. The stock market rises faster, businesses do better, and deficits are smaller. And one of my favorite inconvenient facts, under Republicans, recessions happen 4 times as frequently as under Democrats. So one would have to wonder, why would anybody who cares about the economy, which is all of us, why would anybody who cares about seeing paychecks rise again, fighting inequality, raising the minimum wage, dealing with the challenges that confront us, believe that going back to the failed policies of trickle-down economics would help anybody except for those people at the top? You know, I am not running for my husband's 3rd term or President Obama's 3rd term. I'm running for my 1st term. Carry forward this record of Democratic achievement. We know what works and what doesn't. It works when middle-class families get a raise. That will be my mission from my first day as president to the last. We need growth that is strong, fair, and long-term. So the rewards of success don't just go to those at the top. You know, when a company does well, shareholders and executives aren't the only ones who should benefit. The people who work at that company should as well. The people who actually produce the profits should share in them. If it can work for Market Basket across New England, it can work across America. Here's what doesn't work. When 25 hedge fund managers earn more each year than all the kindergarten teachers in America combined. There's a tax loophole that lets them treat their pay like investment gains, you've heard of it, the carried interest loophole, rather than normal income like everyone else. I have called for the ending of that loophole since 2007. I am sick of multimillionaires paying a lower tax rate than a teacher or a nurse. That is wrong. I'll close that loophole. And I will reform our tax code so everyone pays their fair share, particularly those who have the most benefits. I have proposed incentives to encourage long-term investments in small businesses, hard-hit communities, and building our country, not the quick speculation and trading that goes on. I want to see tax credits that will encourage apprentices and profit sharing. I want young people brought into our economy again so that they have a chance to have a better future. The minimum wage so no one who works hard in America has to live in poverty. I'll fight for small businesses that create the jobs in America. We're a small business country. I want to be the small business president. I don't think we should be tilting our tax code, our economic policy toward big businesses that can hire lawyers and lobbyists. Most jobs in America come from small businesses. That's why I have a plan to make it easier for entrepreneurs to get loans and avoid red tape. I'll hold corporations accountable when they gouge Americans on drug prices or pollute our environment or bust unions and exploit workers. And that's just the beginning. We're going to do what works. Because as important as economic worries are, and I hear them everywhere, they're not the only ones that families face today, are they? If you get out there and you actually listen to people, as I've done all over New Hampshire, you hear about problems that rarely make the headlines, but that keep families up at night. I've listened to those stories. I've heard about the heartaches and the hopes. It really has motivated me to roll up my sleeves to come up with solutions that can help make a difference in the lives of families here and everywhere across our country. For example, I never expected that substance abuse and mental health would be major issues in my campaign until I came to Keene on my very first trip. And then I started listening. I heard story after story about heroin, pills, meth, alcohol, other addictions. I met a grandmother who's taking responsibility for raising her grandchild because her daughter's struggling with addiction. She can't be the parent she should be. I've sat and listened to moms and dads who've lost their children, counselors and doctors and police officers who've done everything they can to help save people. One man in Laconia said to me the other day, "I don't want to go to more funerals." When you hear those stories, it's hard not only to be moved and sad, but it's also motivating. At my first town hall about this issue in Keene, hundreds and hundreds of people packed into the gymnasium, and they told their stories. And then in Laconia, just a few days ago, we heard about solutions. I've got a plan to do something about this epidemic. More and better treatment and prevention, especially for young people. Making sure everyone who writes prescriptions is trained in addiction. Putting rescue drugs like Naxalone in the hands of first responders. Criminal justice reform so nonviolent drug users get time to heal instead of time in jail. There are so many stories that people share with me. That's what drives my campaign. That's what gets me up every day. Often I'm asked, how can you do this? Well, it is challenging. But it's also incredibly rewarding because I meet people who are so resilient, so filled with purpose and hope. I want to be the president who takes on the big challenges. Look, we have to worry about how we make sure Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. We have to deal with the refugee crisis in Europe and so much else. But I also want to be the president who keeps listening, who hears about the challenges you talk about around your kitchen table, like student debt. A student here in New Hampshire really summed it up for me, saying that paying for college shouldn't be the hardest thing about going to college. And yesterday, Governor Hassan and I were at the University of New Hampshire, where we were talking about my plan, and where we heard from two students who very clearly and emotionally talked about what their challenges were trying to get the education they've always dreamed of. I call my plan the New College Compact. As president, I will make sure families can afford to send your kids to college. Everyone with student debt can refinance that debt, just like a mortgage or a car loan. Cost won't be a barrier anymore, and debt won't hold anyone back. I also have to say that I've heard a lot about another challenge that gets too little attention in our long-term looking forward into the future about what kind of country we're going to be and how we can help people live up to their potential, and that is the caregiving crisis in America. I met a woman in Dover who's caring for her husband with Alzheimer's and her mother with Alzheimer's. I just met a young man backstage who's had to go to part-time work to take care of his mother with Alzheimer's. People don't know where to turn. They don't know where to get help. As a senator, I passed a law giving family caregivers more support. And as president, I will make this a national priority for families, number one. Every one of us knows somebody who could benefit. The veterans who deserve better care. The parents of children with autism who need help and solutions. Families who can't find facilities to provide mental health treatment for their loved ones, no matter how hard they try. You know, it was summed up for me by the single mom who's juggling a job and courses at a community college while raising 3 kids alone. She said, look, I don't expect anything to come easy. But she asked me, isn't there anything we can do so it isn't quite so hard? These are all challenges leaders should care about. Problems that don't get nearly enough attention on the campaign trail or in Washington. Well, I'm not only paying attention. As president, we will get results together. Because if you want a president who will tell you everything that's wrong with America and who's to blame for it, you've got plenty of other choices. And my goodness, didn't we hear enough of that the other night at the Republican debate? But if you want a president who will listen to you, work her heart out to make your life better, and together to build a stronger, fairer, better country, then you're looking at her. election ultimately is about finding a leader with a vision for the future, broad enough to encompass this great country of ours, and the skill and determination to lead us there. Someone who can defend and build on the progress we've made, not let it slip away or get ripped away. I will stand up to all the attacks from the super PACs and the Koch brothers every chance I get. And I will do what I have always done to try to overcome the dysfunction in Washington, actually to get things done like I did when I was First Lady and we didn't get health care that time, and then I turned around and I worked with Ted Kennedy to get the Children's Health Insurance Program to take care of more than 8 million kids. Or when I was in the Senate and I realized that our National Guard didn't have the same access to health care, and I teamed up with Lindsey Graham, and we passed it, so now every single one of our National Guard has that same option that they should have had before. I have been fighting my whole life to even the odds for people who have those odds stacked against them. That's what I'm going to keep doing, fighting for families, fighting for fairness, fighting for you. And I've learned that through a lot of experiences, but I really learned it first from my own mother. Abandoned and mistreated by her family, she was out on her own at 14 working as a housemaid. She channeled her hardships into a deep commitment to serving and respecting others. She's been my touchstone, guiding me through my life of service. My first job out of law school wasn't at some big New York law firm. It was with the Children's Defense Fund, standing up for kids who needed a fighter. Every step along the way, I've stood up for women, for children, for families, for underdogs, everyone who needs a champion. And I'm just getting warmed up. I believe in America, but I believe in America we should have each other's backs. We should lift each other up, not tear each other down. And that is especially true when it comes to lifting up women who deserve equal pay for equal work. Every family deserves access to quality, affordable child care so they can actually go to work. Every American should have access to paid family leave so you don't have to choose between a paycheck and taking care of your baby or your mom or your dad. I'm a proud Democrat because we're the ones who stand up and say, the Affordable Care Act is here to stay. We have come too far. We have fought too hard to let anyone take it away. We're the ones also who understand we have to make Social Security even stronger, and especially for widowed, divorced, and single women who are the poorest older people in America. We're the ones who support teachers, not scapegoat them. Who will invest in universal pre-kindergarten and early childhood education so all of our kids get the best possible start. It is past time for us to get over the toxic debates about education that have paralyzed us for too long. Let's focus on what actually works to help teachers teach and children learn. As president, I'm going to actually listen to teachers and learn what they know from being in those classrooms every single day. Strong public schools in every zip code and community across America. And I am honored to have earned the endorsement of the NEA right here in New Hampshire. And Democrats believe we don't have to choose between protecting our environment, combating climate change, and growing our economy. We can do that by embracing clean, renewable energy. I want us to set big goals in this country again. I can remember, I think there's a few of you who also can remember, when President Kennedy challenged us to send a moon mission that would land a man on the moon and bring him back within a decade. And a lot of people thought that was impossible, didn't they? Nobody knew what would happen. I was sure, because the president set that goal, that America could get it done. And we did. That's the kind of president I want to be. I want to challenge us again, particularly young people again. First term, we will have installed 500 million more solar panels. And by the end of my second, we will produce enough renewable energy to power every home in America. We can do this. We can take on climate change, not deny it, but take it on. And at the same time, create millions of new jobs and businesses that will make America the clean energy superpower of the 21st century. And boy, Democrats believe, and we're the only ones left who believe this, we have to stop the flow of secret, unaccountable money that distorts our elections and drowns out the voices of American voters. You know, it's predicted by some that our next president may have as many as 3 appointments to the Supreme Court. Now, if you weren't convinced to vote for a Democrat before, I hope you are now. I will appoint justices who will protect every citizen's right to vote instead of every corporation's right to buy elections. And if necessary, I will work to pass a constitutional amendment to undo the Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United. What faith you practice or who you love, America has a place for you, and you should have the same opportunity as anyone else to live up to your potential. So we have a great agenda. We know what it means to be a Democrat. We're going to fight back against those who will do, say, and spend whatever it takes to turn our country in a very different direction. Who watched the Republican debates the other night? Oh, you gluttons for punishment, you. 15 candidates, 5 hours, not a single fighter for the middle class. And the fact checkers are having a field day with their answers. The Republicans' positions are not just factually inaccurate, they are deeply out of touch and out of date. Not one of them offered a credible plan to make college more affordable or combat climate change. Did you hear anything about family leave or preschool? Or what about putting an end to the gun violence that plagues our communities every single day? Not one of them is willing to say loudly and clearly, Black Lives Matter. And of course, no solutions for skyrocketing prescription drug costs, no ideas about how to raise incomes, no ideas at all when you stop to think about it. But there was one statement I had to agree with. Yeah, hard to believe, right? As Lindsey Graham said, Hillary Clinton has a list a mile long to help the middle class. About that. I do. It was the most honest thing anyone said that night. And I'm going to keep adding to that list. Keep fighting for the middle class. Keep showing that voters have a real choice in this election. Don't be distracted by their flamboyant frontrunner trying to bully and buy his way into the presidency. His latest outrage, the way he handled the question about President Obama, was shocking, but not surprising. He's been trafficking in prejudice and paranoia throughout this campaign. But I got to tell you, if you look at the policies of the other Republican candidates, they are just Trump without the pizzazz or the hair. He says hateful things about immigrants. They don't support a real path to citizenship. We need comprehensive reform, not demagoguery and deportations. And we have heard Mr. Trump insult and demean women. You know, by the way, Donald, when you say you cherish women, that really doesn't make it any better. Why don't you stop cherishing women and start respecting women? Listen closely, he's not the only one. All of the Republican candidates want to defund Planned Parenthood. Many are willing to shut down our government to do it, no matter the consequences for our country. We are talking about a women's health service that provides 500,000 breast cancer exams every year. That's what they want to stop. Here in New Hampshire, you know about this. Last month, your executive council cut off funding to Planned Parenthood in this state. Well, actually, 3 men on the executive council voted to deny women access to health care across New Hampshire. I'd like them, along with the Republican candidates, to meet the mom who caught her cancer early thanks to a screening, or the teenager who avoided an unintended pregnancy because she had access to birth control, or the survivor of sexual assault who got emergency contraception. These extreme views might be right for the Republican primary, but they are dead wrong for America. And now I know that when I talk like this, some of the Republicans say I'm playing the gender card. Well, if calling for equal pay and paid leave and women's health is playing the gender card, deal me in. I'm going to fight until every woman has the rights, the opportunities, and the respect she deserves until every little girl in America knows without a doubt she can grow up to be anything she wants, even President of the United States. So, my friends, let's go out and wage this campaign and elect Democrats at every level. Let's take back school boards. Let's take back the legislatures. Let's take back every position all the way to the White House, because if this election is about America's future, not America's fear, Democrats will win. And when you hear Mr. Trump saying he wants to make America great again, respond, America is great. We just need to make it work for all the people in our country again. Great campaign. It's going to be fun. Because what makes the other folks uncomfortable is what makes America what we are today. Our diversity, our ingenuity, our innovation, the signs of American dynamism, our immigrant culture, all that we do to really build a country where everybody has a place, where there are no limits on what we can achieve when we put our common interest ahead of our self-interest and our common sense ahead of nonsense. I am fighting for that America. I'm fighting for all Americans, not just some, for the struggling, the striving.